Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and today's video we're going to be talking about Hyper Carry Clara, essentially building teams around her so she's the sole damage dealer and she carries the entire team, and whether or not that's viable. Initially, a lot of people observed Clara to have some pretty high damage multipliers, and people were thinking she might have a bit of potential as a damage dealer. However, recently, a lot of people have just started using her as a tank, and we haven't seen too many people use her as a primary damage character in the endgame, with a lot of tier lists even moving her out of the damage column even into the defensive column, which is pretty interesting. So in this video, I decided to give damage Clara a chance and go all in on testing her. We've built her up, let's see how it goes. But first, let's dive a little bit more into that build debate. Now there's merits to both sides of the builds. Let's start out with a tanking build first. People like to play Clara as a tank because she is able to fulfill the role of a tank pretty damn well thanks to her ultimate, giving her the ability to taunt enemies, being destruction, which has an innate higher chance to be hit, and a pretty good amount of damage reduction thanks to her ultimate as well. But the thing that makes Clara different than a character like Japad or Fire main character is her ability to do pretty modest damage while she's tanking, even without any DPS gear. In addition to that, she's also able to deal break in the physical capacity to enemies pretty damn well as well, way more than a character like Japad would, and a pretty decent amount similar to Fire main character. So overall, she definitely does have some pretty good pros as a tank, and people definitely use her as that offensive tank option. Now the same thing that makes Clara good as a tank also makes her good as a potential damage dealer though. The reason people give her so much credit as a tank is that her numbers on her abilities are very, very high. When you look at something like her talent, which activates every single time she's hit, it hits for 130% of her attack. That's pretty damn crazy, and it hits every single time she's attacked by anything. So if an enemy hits you, you're hitting them back. In addition to that, though, her ultimate hits even harder. If you actually think about the ultimate in a way which kind of puts it in a vacuum, it's one of the hardest hitting ultimates in the game. It guarantees that Clara will counterattack 2 times in the next few actions when the enemy hits anyone on your team, meaning it's kind of guaranteed that you're going to be getting the counterattacks. So if you weren't going to get hit on Clara, you could kind of consider the ultimate as doing almost 500% of her damage every single time you cast the ultimate. Now, of course, it's not going to work out to be that good in reality because Clara is likely going to be getting hit anyway, and you're only going to be getting the extra damage from the ultimate, but it's fair to say it's a pretty damn good ultimate and it hits pretty damn hard as well, so she's got some pretty big numbers. In addition to that, when she uses her skill against a marked target, which happens every now and then, or if you have E1, it's pretty much all the time, her skill actually hits as hard as my Yanqing's skill, which is a higher level, on every enemy if they are marked. So it's pretty crazy the amount of damage she can deal with that as well. What I'm trying to say here is that her multipliers are pretty damn high while also having all the utility of the tanking build. Meaning you could strike a balance between having enough survival and also dealing enough damage to make Clara a very, very interesting character. A character that can not only deal massive amounts of damage, maybe even equal to some of the better damaging characters in the game, but also fill the role of a tank and a ton of mitigation, meaning she'd be one of the better damaging characters to run with a 1 DPS, 2 supporting characters, and 1 sustained composition. And that's pretty interesting. So let's dive into that a little bit more though and put Hyper Carry Clara, one that focuses on doing all the damage instead of tanking, to the test. Now before we get started, we need to gear up our Clara. Now for what it's worth, my Clara is idle on 0 and she's not really maxed out. She's level 70 and she doesn't have very high traces. It's pretty here or there. When it comes to her relics though, unfortunately all I've got is Musketeer of Wildweed. So I thought I'm going to try out a speed variant of Clara, even though some people don't think it's that good. And I'll explain why that is anyway. But we're using a Musketeer of Wildweed 4 set here, and I'm focusing on a few stats here. I'm focusing on critical strike rating, critical strike damage, and of course attack, but also speed, which is a little bit unorthodox for Clara here. Now the crit, attack, and crit damage explain themselves, but let's talk a little bit about the speed. So in my opinion, Clara is an excellent character, and there is a lot of merit in having her move slowly. She can have higher uptime on her taunt, and that's really, really good for the supporting build that wants to tank. But when playing as a damage dealer, I wanted to try and maximize the amount of skills that I could use and also the amount of energy I was generating so I could get as many ultimates in and as many empowered talents as possible. So I figured that speed might be a pretty good addition, and hitting a speed breakpoint might also be pretty favorable. Now, unfortunately, I'm just shy of the 134 speed breakpoint, which would allow me to attack a lot more frequently, but I think this amount of speed is good enough to see if speed is viable at all. You guys can compare my Clara to your Clara in your own results. Now, the other thing which I'm doing here, which is a little bit different, is I am using Space Sealing Station instead of El Salcedo. That's definitely a damage loss, but it's all I've got, so it is what it is. Now, in terms of the rope here, some people definitely like to use energy recharge on Clara, and that's very, very good for tanking Clara, because it allows her to get more ultimates more consistently and have her taunt up for a higher amount of time and get more empowered attacks and all sorts of stuff like that. So she's going to be doing a lot more break on all the enemies, and that's really good for tank Clara. But because we're DPS, I'm doing attack this time, and we're going to be trying to maximize her damage. So we're going to be going down that path, but energy recharge definitely seems to have some merit as well. For our light cone, we're using the free-to-play on the Fall of the Neon, so that's definitely pretty accessible, and I think it's going to do the job. But it's fair to say her signature is definitely way better if you can get your hands on it. Alright, so that all sounds great. Big damage numbers, reasonable build going already. Why are more people not using damage Clara? What is the big issue here? If she's got the numbers, she should be able to nail Memory of Chaos and get it done, right? Well, there is one pretty big issue, and that is that all of her damage is conditional on getting hit, and that means she's gonna have to take some pretty big damage in order to dish it out. And that's a bit of an issue, because if you build her pure damage instead of going for a few defensive stats or anything like that, you're going to be up against taking a massive amount of damage. And while she's a little bit more tanky thanks to her ultimate than other characters, she's not so tanky that she can survive like a normal tank who's stacking pure defense or using shields like Japad or Fire main character. So the first hurdle is keeping her alive, and we're going to have to solve that with our teammates. And that's definitely a big problem. The second one is that of consistency. The more enemies that are attacking Clara, the more energy she's going to get, the more counterattack she's going to perform, and overall the more damage she's going to do, and the smoother her gameplay is going to be. Without a bunch of enemies attacking you, you're going to do way less damage, and that's another reason I built speed. We can kind of claw back a little bit of that damage by using the skill and, kind of trying to get over the line there and making her a little bit more consistent. And finally, the point with Clara is gonna be whether or not she can actually do things in time. When you're in Memory of Chaos, the number one thing is of course surviving, but after that, killing it in time so that you can get enough stars to where a character would be competitive. It's all well and good if you can survive and you can get it done, but if you're not getting 3 stars, it's gonna be pretty hard to market her as a top tier damage dealer. So she's gonna have to do it fast as well. Let's get into the team building and see if we can solve these problems. Alright, on to team building. So we've got a few problems to solve here, and we also need to test Clara out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this team here, we're going to explain it, and then we're going to head into Memory of Chaos, and we're going to see if Clara can do Memory of Chaos in time and clear out her side before the timer reaches halfway for 3 stars. So let's break this team down here. So first and foremost, Clara is a character who really wants consistency and survival, and the main character that people elect to use with Clara is March 7th. The reason for this is that you can shield up Clara, increase her chance to be hit even more, and that's also going to contribute to her overall sustainability and survival. In addition to that, March is a pretty nice character being Preservation, that she can run a Preservation Light Cone, which will also further mitigate a ton of damage that Clara is taking. You can see here, 12% mitigation, pretty damn nice. So they definitely are a pretty damn good pair. Now unfortunately, March has some pretty strong anti-synergy with Clara as well, being Ice. Ice freezes enemies when you break them, so Clara won't be getting as attacked as much, which will slow down your Memory of Chaos clears. And in addition to that, March's ultimate also freezes, which you don't want because again, it'll slow down the enemies and slow down your Memory of Chaos clears. Now we also do have a healer in this team here just in case we need it. March can't keep the entire team up, and if you start spreading the shield around, more allies are going to get hit than Clara, and she's going to lower her overall damage. We want Clara to be the one that's hit, not everyone else, so we can only shield Clara with this composition, so we need some sustain for the rest of the team. So we're bringing Natasha. And finally, we're bringing Ting Yun. Ting Yun, in my opinion, is probably one of the best supports for Clara. She can give her a blessing that activates every single time Clara counterattacks, adding massive massive amounts of damage to Clara's rotation. In addition to that, she boosts her stats a lot, and also, most importantly, grants Clara a ton of energy, which allows her to keep her ultimate up more, getting attacked more, getting more energy, and the cycle continues. Makes it smoother, which is very nice as well. So this is a team we're going to be rolling with. Let's get into Memory of Chaos and see how fast she does it. Let's start our Clara off on Memory of Chaos 7 and against an enemy that is physical weak to see what her true potential is. We can see here that you get 16 cycles to clear this for 3 stars, meaning that she's going to have 8 cycles to clear her side. Let's see if she can do it, and if so, how fast. Alright, so messing around with this team a little bit, I realized that using 2 Team Union techniques is definitely the way to go, and then entering with Clara so that she starts out with a taunt is also a big plus. Now, when I'm running this team, I actually also found a few other things here. You pretty much always want to use Ting Yun's ultimate on Clara on cooldown. You want to keep the blessing active from Ting Yun as much as possible as well, and then also keep a March shield on Clara as far as you can and as much as you can to increase the taunt and sustain of her as well. Now, one thing which you might not expect is that you should, in my opinion, maybe not use March's ultimate really at all, unless you're pretty sure the enemy can't be frozen, because that's going to slow you down considerably, and it's going to reduce your overall clear time and damage, which is kind of bad. In addition to that, I didn't need to use too many heals from Natasha, but I wasn't too afraid to use them either, thanks to the fact that Clara is kind of slow, and there's not really too many other team members on this team who need to use skill points, so you can use it as much as you need. But overall, it was a pretty comfortable team, and in this Memory of Chaos run, we actually get it done pretty damn quick. Clara actually clears Memory of Chaos 7 in 5 cycles. That's 3 cycles early, which is pretty damn good, and I think this is a pretty good representation of a normal fight which is physical weak. We had 4 adds at the start, that's pretty normal. We had a 1 elite and 2 adds, which is pretty normal as well, and then we finished it off with 2 elites. That's pretty standard, so I think it's a pretty good representation of how fast Clara should be. But as with all things, it's time to turn up the heat and see if she can handle Memory of Chaos 10. Alright, so we're going to pit Clara up against Memory of Chaos 10 side 1 here, and you'll notice that it is not universally weak to physical, so we're actually going to be semi-brute forcing this, which is a very, very good test in my opinion for Clara and her viability in Endgame. This requires us to do the whole thing in 20 cycles, so half of that is 10 cycles. The question is, can Clara get this done in 10 cycles flat? Let's find out. Alright, because we're up against some pretty hard content here, I figured we'd go into a little bit more detail on exactly how combat plays out with Hyper Carry Clara here. So we're going to enter with her technique as normal, we're going to get a few physical breaks, and we're also going to be focusing on buffing up Clara ASAP here with Ting Yun. Definitely a bit of a no-brainer here. Then we're going to be trying to get to her ultimate as soon as possible as well, so we're going to be going ahead and using her skill and getting some damage out here. Now, one of the hallmarks of a really good damage dealer is their ability to clear adds in 0 cycles on their first turn. That basically means that you spend no turns on the first wave here. And I'm pretty interested to see if Clara can manage this here. So she's going to go ahead and throw out that skill. Most of the enemies are pretty low, and we're actually going to get another skill here thanks to the speed build that I've built on Clara here, and the fact that we've got Dance 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 on Ting Yun. So you can see the enemies all get a chance to attack, and they're going to go in there and trigger all of the counter attacks from our Clara, and they're going to get absolutely nuked here. But in addition to that, thanks to our Clara having another attack here with the speed build, we are actually going to get the 0 cycle, no problems, and we're going to be able to go into the next round with a full 40 waves ready to go and a Clara ultimate in the bank. So this is a 2 add and 1 elite wave here. So we're just going to be doing our normal focus on keeping up Clara's ultimate and Ting Yun buffs and, keeping the March shield on her as well, making sure all the damage goes on Clara. We're not going to be using that March ultimate, and we're going to be going ahead and whittling him down. Now, there is a bit of an advantage to Clara in this fight thanks to all of the adds that this guy summons, and that is a pretty interesting thing with Clara. The more enemies there are, the more damage she deals. So if you're ever against an enemy which attacks multiple times, like Kafka, or an enemy which summons multiple adds which will attack you, that's going to increase her damage massively, way more so than other characters would have in a similar scenario. But you can see here we're mowing down the enemies without too much trouble. They are basically just killing themselves on Clara's Svarog here, so it's definitely pretty damn nice, and things are not risky at all. We're not having any issues with survival, and overall this team is definitely cruising. The only question is going to be whether or not we can do things fast enough. Now if we skip a bit ahead here, we can see that with 1 enemy on the clock here, it definitely does take take a little bit here to get it down, but it definitely does pick up in the future. But we do eventually get this enemy down, no problems, and then we get to move on to the second part here, which is with Clara against 2 elites at a time. And when there's 2 elites, we actually see her damage go up massively here. She's going to be gaining more energy, doing more counterattacks, and overall your skills are also going to be hitting on 2 targets at once as well. So she's a bit like Jing Yuan in that way. She does more damage the more enemies there are, and that's definitely something to remember. If you're going up against an AoE fight, definitely put Clara on that side so she can deal even more damage. With March and with Natasha or another healer on the team, she can definitely take the heat, so you don't have to worry about that too much, and overall she's going to be able to do even more damage. So the question is here, are we able to do it in time? We don't have many cycles left, so we're definitely going to have to push things to see how it goes. Now, of course, with the fishes being summoned, she is getting a lot more energy than normal as well, which is definitely a big boost to her here, and she is actually going to be able to clutch it out just barely and get this done in 10 cycles here, thanks to all those empowered counterattacks that she's got going on here. So she ends up getting it done in 9 cycles, which definitely isn't too shabby for a character with no eidolons and without her signature light cone and non-best in slot gear, to say the least, as a hyper carry here, using pretty much free-to-play accessible characters other than Clara herself. Alright, so while that's pretty cool, and Clara can get Memory of Chaos 10, side 1 done on 1.1, no problems, in time for 3 stars, we both know that that was a pretty good fight for her, and the question is that fast enough? If there was a monster that wasn't summoning ads, or there was a monster that wasn't attacking twice, would she be good enough? Well, I honestly don't think so. I think she'd be too slow. So the question is, can we make Clara do even more damage? Can we amp up her potential? Can we make her clear fast enough that it would potentially be strong enough even with those ads being not summoned here and it not being an AoE scenario? Well, in order to do that, we're going to have to change the team and do another test here. So while March 7th is great, so it's going to really solve that sustain issue and keep our Clara alive and healthy, she's not giving us any damage at all, and we're kind of wasting that ultimate because that would reduce our damage even more. So we definitely should want to look into replacing March with a different character here. And that's exactly what I've gone ahead and done in this team composition. Instead of using March, we're now using Bronya. Now, we'll talk a little bit about supports in a second here, but I chose to use Bronya just because I wanted to get more ultimates and I wanted to get more activations of Ting Yun's Blessing, and overall I just wanted a big damage boost. And while Bronya sounds incredibly counterintuitive with Clara because Clara is really slow and she doesn't want to take too many turns because her taunt will wear off, it actually worked out kind of insanely well. So let's get into that and we'll take a quick look at how fast she did. Alright, I'll spare you guys the play-by-play on this new team here, but it's fair to say that Bronya was a massive improvement on the clear speed side here, but we did run into a new problem, and that problem was survivability. Without March in the picture, we didn't have as consistent taunts on Clara, so other team members sometimes did get hit when the taunt wasn't up 100% of the time. Even when it was up, some team members did get hit sometimes. And in addition to that, we also didn't have as much mitigation because we didn't have that preservation light cone and we didn't have the shield. So it definitely was a whole lot spookier. Now, in order to get through it, I actually did have to use my Bronya in a little bit of a strange way, but it's fair to say we made it through in one piece, although our Ting Yun did die on the very last hit from the enemy before they died. Now, if I did this again, I'm pretty sure my Ting Yun wouldn't have died, but it's fair to say it is definitely pretty scary on the sustain front here. But we actually did manage to clear Memory of Chaos 10 in only 5 cycles now instead of 9, so including Bronya was a tremendous and colossal damage boost here. Now, I did in a few times use the boost on Clara herself to get extra skills, and in addition to that, I also sometimes boosted Clara to use a basic attack. And the reason I did that was because I just needed a little bit more energy to get the ultimate and get the ball rolling once again. And Bronya is really, really good for that. Once the taunt wears off, you can boost Clara straight away, use a basic or skill, get enough energy, and bang, you're straight back into taunt mode and getting all the big juicy hits again. And that's what Bronya was really nice for. In addition to that, her ultimate and a few of her traces also help with the Clara composition as well, giving more damage as well as, a little bit of defense here and there as well, and that's definitely very nice as well. But a lot of the utility did come from Bronya boosting Natasha to get more basic attacks and more healing and overall keep the team alive. But the biggest problem here, while we solved the damage one, is survivability. Alright, so is Hyper Carry main damage Clara viable then? Well, in my opinion, absolutely yes. She was able to blow through Memory of Chaos 7, no problems, with the team you're seeing in the background here, which only has 1 damage support. Pretty impressive in my opinion. Not too bad there. There also wasn't any sort of add shenanigans there, and the enemies weren't attacking her that frequently. It was a Fire Golem and a Shade, and both of those pretty much only attack 1 action per time. Now, in Memory of Chaos 10, we turned up the heat, and she was able to get it done there as well with this composition. Granted though, I think she would be a little bit on the slow side if the enemy wasn't summoning a bunch of adds. And that definitely is where she definitely started to fall a little bit short. But fortunately, thanks to Clara's ability to serve as a hybrid character and tank it up, so to speak, we were actually able to swap over to a damage double support composition here with a free-to-play healer, something which a lot of damaging characters actually have a lot of trouble with here. And I was pretty impressed by her ability to get through this and get it done. And not only that, she got it done in pretty good time. I feel pretty confident even if we didn't have an ad fight, she'd be able to get it done in 10 cycles, especially if you were to fine-tune the team a little bit more. I'm pretty sure Bronya's not the best support for Clara, and you guys can comment down below a bunch of better supports, which you're absolutely going to smash it with as well. Now, in addition to that though, Clara obviously isn't at her maximum potential on my account here. She doesn't have any of her Eidolons, the first of which is incredibly powerful for her, especially in those slower cycles where it's just one enemy. This one's going to boost up your skill damage substantially on average. In addition to that, I also don't have her signature light cone here, which would definitely be a big boost to survivability, especially in those double support compositions, and also give her a lot more damage as well. And who knows what light cones are going to come out further down the line. Her traces also aren't maxed. I don't have the big juicy damage ones here, and in addition to that, her relics are less than optimal to say the least. So overall, I think there's a lot of room to grow for Clara, and this build certainly ain't anything special, so I think you can absolutely juice up her damage even more than I've got going on here. Clara is also a character with some pretty interesting future potential, namely the 2 upcoming characters Luocha and Yukong. They definitely look pretty strong. Comment down below what you guys think of those 2 characters with Clara, and if you have any other recommendations on a Clara build or some tweaks to what I was doing in this video. I'd love to review them and maybe make a follow-up video. If you guys did enjoy the content though, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so the algorithm knows it's worth watching. It'd really help me out. Until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers.